Awesome. Well, hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today for a small business development session for visual communication and branding. The Chamber is really grateful to provide this offering free of charge to our Chamber members, thanks to the generosity of our sponsor, Lake Superior College. LSC has been really instrumental in allowing us to continue to bring these educational series to you and to help grow your business. And so for that, we're really grateful. Before we go ahead and welcome our speaker, I do want to invite Daniel Fanning, the Vice President of Institutional Advancement, up to say a few words on behalf of their sponsorship today. So Dan, thanks for being here.
Sure. Good morning, Chris. Good morning, everyone. I'll keep it real short and sweet. We're just proud to sponsor this. We're proud to work with Chris and the awesome team at the Chamber. They do a great job of organizing all this. And this is about community and education, two things near and dear to Lake Superior College. So we're just proud to be sponsors. I've heard Michael before. He does phenomenal. So I'm excited to see him again. So just thanks for being here and thanks for letting us be part of this.
Thank you so much, Daniel. And thank you for your sponsorship. And of course, Daniel is also the chair of the Chamber's Board of Directors. So he's really involved and we appreciate all that you do. So at this time, I am delighted to introduce our speaker today, Michael Smisek. Mike is the founder and the creative director of Smisek Design Studio. I know you've seen his work around town, some of which include the Duluth Children's Museum, Vicar Distillery, their canned cocktails like Frenchie and North Span, and many more. So Mike, thank you so much for being here today. I'm really excited to learn some of the trade secrets to visual communication and branding that I know many of our organizations can use. So thanks so much for being here.
Yeah, absolutely. Very welcome. Thank you for having me. So I'm going to jump into our my screen here to do the presentation. All right. Okay, so I can, let me make so yeah, if anybody has any questions throughout this, please don't hesitate to type something in the chat. Chris, if you see something, just you can stop me and yell it out, whatever. It doesn't bother me at all.
Perfect, we'll do that.
And then today, we're going to go through what visual communication and branding means, to me and how we implement it in our studio. But like, really, it's how you guys can use it in your own businesses and your own organizations. So our motto here at our studio is thoughtful design with your story in mind. That's how we start every single project. That's what we focus on. We don't just make things that we like, we make things that are right for your story. So I'm Mike Smisek. Smisek Design is named after my last name, Smisek, as a way to actually teach people how to say my last name properly. And so far it's been working. Actually right away, what I would like to kind of see is just, I did see the list of people in your businesses, but maybe even just in the chat, just so you can kind of see the company that you're with. Feel free to take a minute or two, type in your name and maybe your role and what business you're with, just so people can see kind of what people are, what the responsibilities are.
Do you want me to read some of these out, Mike? Or are you browsing them?
I can see them too, and I think it's good for you guys to look at it too if you see the chat, just to see. There's got some owners, some people in marketing roles. Yeah, I'm not gonna put mine in there. I think everybody knows what that is already. Nice. Cool. Awesome, thank you guys. That's really helpful to see, really cool to see all those businesses, organizations. Awesome. So hopefully today we can come away with some things that you can actually take right away today and use. So what we're going to talk about is just really quickly, like just our studio and what we do, and then kind of generally what is a brand. And then we're going to be, you know, we do some design that we'd like to think is kind of highbrow, but really we're going to talk about it with a lowbrow method today. We're talking about the pizza method to help you remember, because it's also lunchtime. We're going to talk about food. Hopefully you're not getting too hungry, but we're going to cover building a fresh brand, discovery, the brand assets, your logo design, education, the brand guidelines and your final assets, and then what you do at the very end where you test and adjust your brand. It'll all make a lot more sense when we get going here. So what is thoughtful design? To me, it's driven by empathy, and it's a crucial ingredient in how we operate our business. We put ourselves in our client's shoes every time that we work on their project. We dream their dreams. We try to proactively think about the problems they're going to face as a business owner and how we can fix those things using design. That really helps us make stuff that not just, you know, looks good, but it actually serves a purpose. Because if there's no purpose, then it's just kind of a pretty thing you make and it doesn't really matter. So a brand, So a brand is a name, a slogan, a design, experience, any other feature that distinctly identifies one business from another. Branding is the process of giving meaning to a specific business, product, or service by creating the identity or the language or the system in which clients associate with your business or organization. Whenever you create brand assets or brand elements, you're actually creating a little bit of a language that people learn how to speak. And we all have our favorite brands and we know how to speak those languages. We just might not realize that because it comes so easily. So why is branding important? Well, first of all, you get recognition. That's what everybody wants, is the marketing piece. That's the piece that everybody sees. And like I said, you build a language for clients to use through visual cues. You want credibility. We've all been to websites where it's still, you know, a black background with lime green writing from the, you know, 90s or something. And that, even though they might be great people, it's not a website that you're going to trust because it's not up to date and it doesn't show that your business is stable. Direction. A lot of times we'll actually dive into branding and we'll talk a lot about mission, vision, values, because we want to know what those are in order to create a brand that says all those things when you experience it in the day-to-day interaction. And so a lot of business owners find the branding process to be very helpful for gaining clarity on who they are and what they want to achieve and where they're headed as a business. And of course, referrals. People love to share and support when the experience is really good, when the brand is really good. That's what they want to share. That's the whole point of it. So when we're talking about branding, why is it even important? Well, on the left-hand side of this page, let's imagine that you didn't create rules for your brand and you didn't establish who you were. The public is going to make, whether you have branding or not, they're going to make up their mind on who you are, what you do, how you do it, what you look like doing it. If you decide to take ownership over it, the right side is your page here. So you say, we stand for this. This is my brand. This is my logo. These are our colors. This is our, you know, our language. This is our voice. People really want to know what to think about you. And if you know what you are, that really helps them. It takes the confusion out of it. All right, so how do we craft that brand identity? Obviously, that's a big question. There's no way we can cover it in an hour, but to try to simplify it, make it easy to understand, or a little easier to understand, we're going to use the pizza method. Or I just made that up. It's not a real method. I just made it up because it's a lunchtime session. So did somebody have a question at all? So I can't really.
I think it was just some feedback, but certainly if you have one, feel free to pop on here or type it in the chat and we're happy to help you out.
Yeah. All right, so step one, you need to identify your outcomes. You need to understand that you do want to build a brand guideline, or you want to build a new logo, or you want to do something new, a new marketing campaign, right? Well, the idea here is like, I need to make a pizza. Okay, well, you can't just make one, you have to prepare it. So you have to start at the end, of course. And I know, like, Karnowski's on this call, she knows all about this stuff, right? Goal setting, right? So you need to know where you're headed. And so where you're headed, a great way to do this is to think about it as a brand guideline document. And in that brand guideline document, you state your name. If you need a new name, that's something people do often as well. You need a logo, a symbol that's your stand-in or your shorthand for your business. You need to know what typeface you're going to use. You can't just use anything you want on your website or on your presentations. It has to flow with your brand. And you have to have your colors, because if you're going to get any clothing or merchandise for employees, you want to have those colors. If you're going to have a banner printed, you want to have all that stuff set aside and understood so that anybody working in your business knows what they're going to do with your brand. And then imagery, so any graphics, photography, what's the style of that? There's all kinds of different styles. We'll dive into all that too. So I kind of already covered this, but the benefit of having a guideline document, it's a reference point. It's a rule book. It's a place for people to go as a resource, especially when you have a little bit bigger business with a few different employees. It really helps them understand. And it also helps with vendors too. If you send something off to a vendor and you have your brand guideline document, they're going to know what color code to use. They're going to know what version of your logo to use. It's really good to have this in place. Okay, so step 2 is discovery. What kind of pizza are we? So what does that mean? Think of your business or organization as a pizza. Are you a New York style pizza, Chicago, delivery, frozen, Sicilian, wood-fired? Are you a gas station? Are you heat lamp pizza? Which one are you? And what does that mean? So it's really just about being honest with yourself. So, think about the Chicago pizza. You're going to dine in with your family. The personality of that might feel a little bit more filling and bold and warm than, say, the night when you have a frozen pizza at home. Both they're fine. There's a time and a place for both, but they feel different. The cost, what you do as a service, is it a quick and fast thing that you do for people that solves a problem? Or is it a little bit more expensive and it takes a long time? What are people willing to use you for, and what are you set out to do as a business? So really understanding yourself is so important. When people don't align on what their brand is and what they really are, that's when there's a lot of confusion as well. So again, leaders who understand exactly who they are, what they do, and where they're going are going to be the most successful. And it's okay to be a frozen pizza if that's who you are. Everybody loves frozen pizza every now and then, right? So some of the questions that we ask, these are kind of like big picture questions that we'll dive into when we do our discovery session, but these are great ones. If you're going to jot down anything today or take a screenshot of it or something, this is the slide to grab. What is the story behind your business? People hang on to stories. They love stories. They love to know why you started doing what you're doing or why you're in your role. What makes your brand unique? This is the hardest one to answer because oftentimes we don't understand. We're just ourselves. We don't know what makes us unique because we just live it every day. But this is where some outside perspective is really helpful. And you try to identify pieces that make you really special because you are different than other people doing the same thing. You just need to identify that. Do you have a mission or vision yet? It's always great that's a great time to reestablish your mission and vision if it hasn't been worked on in a while. And then what problem does your business solve for customers? Don't try to solve everything for everyone. Think about what you do really well for your customers, and then who those customers are and why. Why do they keep coming back to you? Why do they use your service? And where do you want to be found? So that all has to do with branding too. Like, do you want to be found only online? Is it physical location as well? Lots of questions here. I see some people still writing, but I'm gonna keep moving here. Step 3, excuse me, your brand assets. So you need to prep your ingredients for your pizza. Now it's time to create the visual elements to tell your story. So always, every time you make a visual piece for your brand, always ask and check it against those questions that we asked in the discovery piece. So does that, if you created an icon for your logo, does that really answer a question that we asked ourselves in the discovery phase? If it doesn't, if it's just something you like and it has nothing to do with it, then you got to get rid of it. It's got to all have a thread that follows each piece. And in this section too, we're going to talk a little bit about sort of like, we all have different terms. A lot of people have different terms for what is a logo, typeface, fonts, icons, symbols. We'll try to straighten that out in this little section here too. But so logo design, when you start with logo design, it's always great. So here's an example, the one for Lake Avenue down in Canal Park. So when we created this icon, we built a lot of meaning into it. So we have that example, we have sort of like this little formula on the side here. So yes, it's a rowboat because it's in Canal Park near the water. And it's got this shadow that is actually a wine bottle. And the reason we didn't pick a different style boat is because when you're at Lake Ave, it's a very intimate, close, small place. There's a couple booths there, but you'd rarely be sitting at a table when it wasn't just like maybe 2 or 4 people, and you're going to be close to those people. And in a rowboat, it's sort of this romantic idea. You're going to be close to the person in that rowboat. It's going to have a certain sort of feel to it. So already this icon gives you a really good example or a really good idea of what your experience at that restaurant might be, even before you order any food or sit down. So this is a good example of how we built symbols or imagery into the logo to tell a story. And there's multiple pieces in this logo. So here's another one where there's a story built into the logo. And this Ruth's Vegetarian Gourmet, this is Bruce's mother. And she's the one who used to make these vegetarian meatballs, and he wanted to kind of honor her in that way. So we've, hand drew this photo of her and used her as the stand-in for the brand, and also kind of this older style, kind of a homey sort of style word that says Bruce, which is when we break down the logo, we've got her photo here, which is the icon or the symbol, and then we've got the word mark. And we'll talk about this stuff too, but the word mark is just the word Ruth. So on the packaging, there are spots on the packaging where it just has the word mark by itself. And there are parts on the package where it just has her picture. And that's okay. You can break away the logo or the icon from the word mark. But the whole thing together is what we would consider a logo. So that whole piece, the picture of her or a symbol, plus the name of the business, which we call the word mark, and then the tagline or the industry or the product, the Vegetarian Gourmet, that whole thing is the logo. And the pieces of it are part of the brand language that can be broken out. And a really successful brand is one where that is flexible. You could break those pieces apart and it still translates as the same brand. If you see a logo that is kind of like glued together and stuck and you can't break it apart to make it more flexible, that's when you run into problems with your brand, because it can't be used on certain things. And I'm sure all of you have experienced that at some time. That's a lot of the brands that we end up working with, are people who've got something, but they're stuck and they need more flexibility. So when you're working on a brand, you have to consider your font or your typeface. So in one route, massage here, let's try a little, I'm gonna open the, can you somebody tell me what they see in the font or the word mark that works really well for this brand. You can unmute and say it, or you can put it in the chat. Doesn't matter to me. Yep, I see. Yep. So the N and the R are curved, and they're similar to the line work that we built into the icon of the roots, of the tree roots. Now, it's good to have a little clue like that. So if you ever use the word, if she ever uses the word one root by itself, it works really well, and it actually looks very organic. It feels like those tree roots. If we were to do that on every single letter, that's the equivalent of like putting an outfit together where you're wearing like a purple sweatshirt and purple sweatpants. It's not really the best look, in my opinion. So you can't go over the top with this stuff. It's got to complement each other and kind of create a harmony. So we're given little clues here, and that's usually all people need in order to make the connection that those are belong together. I'd also say too, like little things that I noticed with this font, you know, that the letters are not condensed together. They don't look like they're being squished. If you're going to a massage therapist, you don't want to see their logo look like condensed and squished, because that's probably how you already feel. You want to feel loose and open and relaxed, and that's sort of how these brand elements come together as well. We want people to feel like what they're going to feel when they get that service. And again, it's small, but it's also the kind of thing that I think about when I see this. I'd see an open, round circle, and that feels more relaxed to me. Who can throw in the chat here too? But what do we see in this business, this typeface that works for the business?
It reminds you of the, you know, something with clean, the little dots, and then it goes from the thick to kind of the thinner font.
Yep, for sure. Anybody else? Yeah, Kelly's saying that, yep, crisp, clean lines, simple sans serif font, absolutely. This one, actually, they're using like this technology, this machine that actually sprays cleaning product and uses static. So it's a round object, so you don't have to spray it all around everything. It'll actually stick to the entire surface. So that's why that the little bit of the particles on there sticking to the S tell what it does. And it's a very like, it's not a mop and a bucket. It's a very high-tech kind of process. So the font actually looks like sort of a font that we'd see on something that's like a little forward-thinking technology. So we're, again, trying to connect all those pieces together so that there's just one thing being said, not a lot of different pieces coming from different directions. Cool. So now we have our color palette. If you had seen the wall behind me, or can still see the wall behind me, we've got all of our logos, or a lot of the logos that we've worked on, all in black and white. Before I talk about color, I would say that your icon for your business, your logo mark, is really powerful if it can work in one color. And we did it all black and white to show how much personality can still be in the logo, all in black and white. Color is obviously very important to tell your story as well, but it shouldn't be the only thing that makes you different. It should be the actual content, not just the color. So we got to work with the Duluth Children's Museum. And of course, we'd all expect to see certain colors when we're working with something that has to do with children. But we wanted it to look a little bit different than maybe like what you'd expect. So we chose colors that were still mostly primary colors, some secondary colors, but they're all just slightly enhanced or slightly richer a little bit more pastel-y, I guess you could say, but they're not as expected as like the, you think about a Fisher Price brand or something like that, where it's just like super loud red, yellow, blue. We didn't want that. We wanted to look like a place where it was a little bit more inviting and there's a little bit more dimension to it. So that's why we chose the colors here. And a lot of their brand is based on the colors that they use, and also these shapes that we created out of their new word mark. Oh, and I will say this while we're talking about color here, but we're actually talking about typeface. This typeface, it's all rounded, so it kind of hint, even though it's all capital letters, they're rounded, so it does feel more approachable, more like children, kid safe or whatever you want, however you want to call it. But it does actually kind of have more clues of who it's for than just the color, just the shapes. Excuse me. So a lot of our brands and the companies we work for already have colors that we can't change and limited color palettes. So how do we maximize the impact when there's only one color or two colors? That's where you have to get creative and doing things like this banner where it's all yellow and the person is behind the yellow, but you can clearly see her. She's part of that image without being looking too odd being in yellow. It works really well. The trick to use here is use a black and white photo first, then put the yellow over the top of it. Then of course your yellow color won't change. And the contrast of the person will come through. And then being smart with where you put your typeface or your copy and your logos to kind of create a whole story with what you're building. And just using the one color to your advantage. So here on the t-shirt, the link center, the part you want people to see is the yellow part. And that's what they're drawn to right away. And then they read the whole name, the whole word. All right, so last piece for our ingredients would be the imagery and the graphics. So here's an example of some imagery for Oso Smoothie that we worked on. This is a image that fits their marketing really well. And it fits really well because they're focused on the ingredients. They're not a smoothie shop where they make it for you and sell it at a counter. And so in that way, an image of somebody making a smoothie would feel a lot different to me as a consumer than this picture of, it's focused on the fruits and vegetables, the variety of options they have, and the raw ingredients, sort of that feeling that, that it ended up in a blender or somewhere, but that's not the focus. It's not the process of why you're buying it. It's not the quick access why you're getting this. It's actually the attention to the ingredients, the attention to the food. And this image says that to us. So being very deliberate about what images you use and what they say about what you do is really important as well. So here's another example of some imagery for Motive PT. So they do remote physical therapy and finding imagery for this. And sometimes, before this is created, sometimes we have to use stock imagery. And a lot of you, I'm sure, have to use stock imagery from time to time. It's really important when you're using that imagery to find photos that look like they are real. We've all seen stock imagery where two men in suits are shaking hands and it looks very, very planned out and awkward. Or you see ads where there's somebody with a light bulb over their head or something. It's like, we've all seen that so much that, it's better if the photos look authentic. So we wanted to work to find these photos that really showed the convenience, the tech focused. Even every part of this brand, it's very tech looking and approachable. And of course, then even subtle things like putting their brand colors over the top of the imagery helps to establish their brand, because they use a lot of this orange and they use a lot of purple. And even though you can't really tell, you never look at the photo and say, yeah, they put there's purple over that. There actually is a little bit, just so we can see the white lettering better. And it helps to build the brand. So before we go on from here, does anyone have any questions about the pieces we talked about logo design, typeface, color, imagery? All right, quiet chat, so we'll move on. All right. So in the next 5 slides, we're going to take a little bit of time. This is a little bit more of the activity section of what we're doing today. And we're going to look at those elements we talked about and how deliberate the designers were when they put together these pieces, and how every part of it really does tell a story or reinforce the message they're trying to convey. And what I'll do is on each one, we're going to talk about the image, the logo, the color, the font, and even if you want to go into like the voice, like how they're saying it, what they're saying. We didn't really talk about that. It's a little bit more, that's kind of like the second level of branding, is how you say what you want to say. But if you want to mention that in the chat, you can as well. But for example, Jeep, 3 ads here, all pretty similar. And if we look at the image, it might seem obvious, of course, but what do we see in the image that speaks to their customers or the people who would want to buy a Jeep? Yep, Amber, yep. Outdoors, rugged terrain.
Adventure.
Adventure, yep, yep. And I see. And then the logo. So Jeep has, there's 3 different Jeep logos or variations of their logo in each one of these ads. And what's really interesting to me when I look at this is I see, okay, we got the top left one, we've got the Jeep logo, where it's the full grille of the Jeep with the word Jeep. This one down here in the winter scene has almost the same one, but it's like the reversed version where the Jeep is knocked out of the window. The word is knocked out of the window, I should say. And this one's interesting because it's got the word Jeep, but what is front and center, bigger than the other 2, is basically this logo, the grille of their flagship Jeep, right in front of your face. And so they would almost be doubling up if they put that same icon down here as part of their logo. Again, these are all tiny little things, but I think it's important to, if you're a fan of Jeeps, you see this, you don't need to see it down here again, but these are all a little bit more at an angle and you can't really see the grille as well because they're being covered up by either the rays of sun or the black sort of front end of this one. So I see that and I assume that was done on purpose, where they didn't use that version of the logo because the front end of this Jeep is right in the middle of the ad. What about colors for these ads? What do we see generally in the color palette?
Earthy, natural.
Yep. Blue, natural colors, white. How about, think about this ad if this Jeep were green instead of yellow in front of that sunrise. It would be fine, but it probably wouldn't be quite as strong because this sunrise is what we think of as yellow morning, and this whole thing has this sort of orangey, warm tone to it. So they purposely used a yellow Jeep for that. And I also wonder certain things like on this, the one where it's this big one on the right here, if going back to color, like maybe they used one, or maybe they photoshopped the wheel if it had been a metal color instead of black, because they wanted this grille to show more. This would have been a little distracting to have a bright, you know, a non-black wheel down here. So the little things like that, I'm always looking at, always analyzing. I think it's all done on purpose. We don't really realize how much of that is done on purpose, but that's what we're thinking about as designers all the time. And I'd encourage you to think about all those little things. And then going back to the font, of course, these are all like, this font looks like it's basically, you know, been driven over, or it's part of the rock texture or something like that. And these fonts are all very angular and tough and strong looking. And then the last thing I'll say about voice is when we read an ad, our voice in our head reads it for us, right? Elevate your life. I'm saying that in my head when I read this. The toughest vehicle in the world. I'm hearing that. This one doesn't have a headline. So what are we hearing? Are we hearing, I mean, is anybody else hearing the wolf? Like that's, I think in my mind, I don't know that. I don't know who designed this one, but I'm thinking this is the stand-in for a big headline on this ad. And you're still supposed to hear it. So it's got every element that we'd want. It's got a voice and the imagery and the brand elements, but the voice in this one happens to be something that we'd actually imagine, which is, again, it's the beauty of design and advertising. It's amazing that we can come up with these things that, you know, on a 2D print, you're engaging with it with more of your senses than just your eyes. Okay, so let's move on to another one. These Tesla ads are obviously meant to look innovative and progressive. What are the clues, now that we've talked about the Jeep one in depth, what are some things we see from these ads? Whether you can, and you can go out of order. If you see something in the color or the font, go ahead and type that in the chat too. But what are we seeing in these ads that make it feel innovative or progressive?
Maybe more sleek and streamlined, smooth.
Yep. Yep, and Chloe, I would say too, if you're bold and revolutionized, you can't have the thin way bold in order to make it stand out and work. Obviously, bold font is great, but it means even more when we have that contrast next to each other, because it is contrasting what everybody assumes your commute has to look like, right? Yep, the red, black, yep. Yep, Amber, that's right. They put it between two older ones, kind of in front of an older home too. It's not somebody's fancy modern, you know, stylized house. It just looks like a kind of a older neighborhood. I think this is, I mean, the one thing I noticed too is the lay the rubber where your carbon footprint used to be. Obviously, that's right. I'm reading the chat too as you guys are answering, so I'm going back and forth here. But you guys those are really good comments. One cool one I was thinking about when I was looking at this, the one on the left is it's got this gradient from black to a light gray, and you know, if you're thinking about that, like carbon footprint, carbon is dark and it's disappearing, it's going to light, or you know, thinking about the transition of what we think about what vehicles have to be to what they could be. And it's no question that rubber is in the dark color, and you know, it transitions from there. So it's, again, there's a lot built into these, even though they look so simple. I think that's oftentimes simple ads, people are like, you know, they just think, yeah, it's just simple, it says this thing. Well, it really takes a lot of the right ingredients to put it all together. and to make it powerful and memorable. Going back on some of the chat here. Yep, having that in a neighborhood where people, it's an older neighborhood, looks like everybody can afford it. Yep, that's right too. That plants a seed in your head like, hey, that looks like my street. Definitely. Okay, we'll go on to these Nike ads that are all sort of, Nike ads are usually inspiring, but in this case, I feel like a lot of them are historic. What are some of the clues that we see that would make them feel historic? Yeah, black and white, Kelly. What other clues we have that they might be? Emotion. What kind of, if we're gonna read it, yep. Yellow lens. If we're gonna read a newspaper clipping, or we think about newspapers as something that are a little older than reading the news on your phone, but if we're gonna read a newspaper clipping, what kind of font would the newspaper be in? That's what I think about right away. I look at this and I see the call to action, the text is small, like you're reading an article and you're seeing something, you're reading about something that caused a change, and they're using a serif font that feels like it's from a newspaper. And of course, the copy is written in a very powerful way, but to me, those pieces kind of take things that are happening, they could be happening in our lifetime, and it's making history right now, or it did happen a while ago, and it's important to remember where that person or that thing came from and what they accomplished. But by doing it this way, they've really made this powerful message very clear for anyone who's looking at it. I mean, even if you don't read what it says, you get what they're trying to say to you. And it's totally different than the Tesla ad. And then all of these things are all going back to asking yourself who you are and what you want to say and what you stand for and what you want other people to think about you or say about you moving forward. You know, Nike here is owning this idea of we've been around for a long time. We care about who make history. We care about people who have passion and take stand, or, you know, it's just a really cool, a powerful way to be able to make your stand as a brand. And then a complete 180 from the Nike ads. But then of course you've got fun and playful. And I think fun and playful oftentimes seems like you can just throw a bunch of stuff together and it feels like a kid would like it, or like it's made for kids. But I think it's still important to use smart design when you're designing for kids. And a lot of these are very smart for a lot of different reasons. How about, I know it's a little bit small, but this, with all the characters around it, that is kind of the new brand for Nickelodeon. What do we see in that word mark that is clever or that works really well for their brand? This is the one I'm talking about right here, or this abbreviation. Yeah. Right. So, yep, Chris, that's what one I was thinking about. The eye is definitely like shaped like a kid. It's got the proportions of a kid, not of an adult. It looks like a person, but more proportioned like a kid. And then there is sort of a bubble font, but it does have some areas where it is very clean and crisp. So it doesn't get too out of hand and too, you know, you still need structure in your designs. I mean, this SpongeBob structure is very organized and very aligned. A lot of yellow space, but it still feels crazy and whimsical and goofy to me. Any like Kids' Choice Awards, it's got a lot of color and it's loud, but at the same time, there still is nice structure. And so whenever you design something, you really want it to have contrast, have contrasting elements and structure. And without structure, if you don't have things holding it together, then it feels like messy. And that's when people kind of, their brain just doesn't want to process it. You need to give them a little bit more stability. Like the Nickelodeon studios here, I like how the bottom of the Nick font has a nice straight line. It really holds it, even though the top is very bubbly. This one is kind of bubbly all over. And for me, it just looks a little bit more like it's floating. It doesn't really seem as refined. And I think that that's why this is such a big improvement on what this used to be. All right, how are we doing on time here? Okay, so last one here. Again, this one might seem pretty obvious, but kind of fun to talk about something that's this extreme, aggressive sort of feel. So what do we see? What do we see in this one that makes it feel extreme or aggressive? Yep, dark colors, Maria. Yep, claw marks, angled font, jagged, lime green is energetic, monster claws make the M. So it does make for a very memorable brand. Yep. The green is in each one of those. Notice how even in this bigger ad, the person, you know, some people might not think to make the top of it darker. The sky just might go on and be green and it might look pretty cool, but by pushing this kind of vignette, this black vignette down a little bit, it gives you room to write your text. It also pushes the focus down to the focal point, which is of course the biker. Those are little tips like how to compose your image. This is, you know, that's more about like kind of graphic design basics, but really thinking about where your focal point is and how to draw the viewer's eye to that spot really helps with pushing the dark area down there. Okay. Thank you guys for, excuse me, giving your feedback on all those. I know that there's a lot going on in those. So step 4 in our pizza method is actually baking the pizza, putting your brand guidelines together. That's where we knew we were going to go at the beginning. If you remember, we're going to make a brand guideline document. We're going to align on all of our brand elements. So now it's time to put all together, and you know, I call that the bake time, because you put it in there and you're going to work on all those pieces, put it all together and have all those relationships come together. So now you got your logo. The brand guideline would contain a logo design, your font, your typeface. It would identify your color palette, the brand imagery, and a little note here that, yeah, you know, I've got a pizzazz here. Everybody knows what those are. You can use a pizzazz to make a pizza. It'll turn out fine, but if you've got the means, you know, go for a real oven if you can. The pizza will come out better. So what does what's in a brand guideline? So some of you maybe have paged through a brand guideline document before. Maybe some of you have not. What is found in a brand guideline document is these elements I'm going to show down now, excuse me. So you got your logo. Like I said, the full logo is the combination of your brand visual elements. So with Spotify, this is their icon, this is their word mark. And you can show certain things in your brand guideline document, like never crop your logo to its edges. And I see a lot of this happen, especially on TV ads, like local TV, when somebody sponsors something, you know, concerts, concert for the DSSO, right? There's people send in their logos and you have to purposely build out a little bit of padding because they'll come to you like this, but really they should come to you with a little bit of padding around it. So if you're working with the designer, make sure they add a little bit of extra space around your brand elements, because otherwise, if you got somebody working that's not paying attention, they're going to put your brand, your logo is going to be really close to another one. And you don't want that. You want a little bit of breathing room, a little bit of space. So you get to identify, you know, also how small can you make your logo with it working? I think about, and you go on Instagram and you've got your tiny little circle, that's your profile picture that everybody sees. We've even got little icons right now in the chat of everybody's businesses. How well does your logo work in that tiny little space? Can you tell what it is, or is it too congested? Is it too much going on? And then you go to your font and typography. So if you hire a web developer to help you, you know, change out all the fonts on your website so they match your brand, they're going to want to know what fonts, what weights, and when to use it. Using it for headlines, using it for body copy, using it for pull quotes. Really, really good to identify those things on your brand guidelines so that you know what you're doing when you're running your business, because you don't want to be bogged down with these things when you're just trying to run your business. You want these things just to be second nature for the people that are helping you. And of course, your colors, you want to identify, if you can, your color formula for your Pantone colors. A lot of designers and print shops will have like a Pantone deck. It's kind of like looking at your, you know, the paint swatches at Sherwin-Williams. You find the one that matches your brand color. And then you have RGB color codes, which are used for digital, so anything on a screen. And then the CMYK formulas are used for anything that's being printed. You also have another code that's a hex color, and that's getting into the weeds, but identify your colors in all the ways that you can so that no matter where you send it, people can reproduce your brand the right way. And then your imagery and photography. So you could even showcase some of your imagery that you like to use and identify why it is that you're using, that you're featuring that image. So is it the point of view of, you know, the viewer? Is it the filters you're using over the photo? Do you always go on Instagram and use the same filter? Is that part of your brand? Are you doing it in Photoshop? And is there certain parts of your business that you want to focus on? Is it the client you want to focus on in the imagery, or the employees, or the product itself? Those are all different perspectives that change the way you look at something. A lot of times, real estate, houses that sell, well, everything sells really fast right now, but houses that sell really fast, the photos are taken from a little bit different perspective than what people would expect. So the photographer got down a little lower so you could see things in a way that you wouldn't normally see as your normal, you know, whatever your normal height is walking around a house, because that's what you'd it's kind of a predictable point of view. You can show something that's a little more interesting, that'll catch people's attention. And then brand identity, these are just really basic examples, but you can have them all laid out on one sheet of paper. It can be a book, but you can identify simple things like, here's our logo, here's our colors, here's variations of our logo, here's what our letterhead could look like, or our imagery could look like. That's what the guideline would actually look like. All right, and then we get to step 5, which is to test and adjust. So you're having people over, you're gonna have them all try your pizza, right? So invite your followers to see your shiny new brand. You're gonna put it out there, you're gonna use social media, printed elements, you know, that's signage and letterhead and vehicle wraps, or whatever you can think of. It could be in store or on site at your location, a website refresh, and maybe have a new photography or a new video made with your new brand elements. And as you grow into your brand, it can be set, and it's nice to have as much of it set as possible, but it will change. You're going to learn what works really well, and you're going to learn what other things need to be changed. And it's okay to change certain things with your brand as you learn more about it. You get to know that language a little bit more. You just make those changes and keep moving forward. It's just important that you don't change everything all the time, because that's not sticking with your brand. All right, questions? I'm going to open up the.
We'll give a few minutes for questions. Feel free to type it in the chat or pop on video and audio, and we can have a conversation that way. So whatever works best for you. I do love that pizza analogy.
Yeah, is everybody hungry now?
Well, wonderful. If we're not seeing any questions, I might stand here for another minute so we can certainly connect if you feel the need to do so. But otherwise, I will be sending out this recording to you so you can refresh, you can rewatch it, you can share it with a colleague if you need to. But Mike, thank you so much for joining us today. This is really helpful, really engaging. And of course, thank you to Lake Superior College for your sponsorship. So
I just threw my email in the chat, so if you guys want to save the email, and if you have any questions ever about any of your branding stuff, let me know.
fabulous. Thanks, Mike.
There was a question in there I saw.
Oh, any
Kelly's,
recommendation?
yep.
Yeah, yep. Kelly, that's a great question. We do that kind of often, and it's nice to, in some ways, show that a brand is related. So you could use a similar icon or mark, or you could use a similar typeface to kind of give people the impression that it is the same family. There's something like the Rambler. That typeface is on the Rambler food truck, which is a big green truck. And then we did Midcoast, which is a more refined catering company, but it's the same kitchen, the same people, and the fonts are the same, but they look, different enough where they're two different businesses. So those are related in that way. Yeah, fundraising campaigns are maybe a little bit more of a more difficult question, unless I know specifics, but.
That's a good question. Thanks, Kelly.
Yeah. But Kelly, if you want to email me at all, I have worked with the DSSO in the past to do some of their season work. So I kind of know that brand a little bit. I'd be happy to talk about that.
All right, well, I am going to close this out. Thank you again for joining us, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the afternoon. I will be in contact with the recording and even resend Mike's contact information should you wish to follow up. So I hope you all have a really nice day and enjoy the afternoon.
All right.
Thanks.